Hello, this is Ryan Kingsley. In this short tutorial, I want to show you how I sculpted the boots for this Thor sculpt. So specifically, how I sculpted the strapping around it. Now, the boot itself came from a base mesh made inside of Maya, and a very simple base mesh. You can see if I go all the way down, then that's all we have. No topology for the straps in there at all. All of that gets put into the high res here. So creating straps, of course, it could be simple, it could be hard, but I like to always do things with a very specific structure to it. So let me show you how I went about doing that. So let's start with a very simple base. The feet have been posed. Later on, I ended up moving the leg a little bit, so let me do that actually right now. Is perspective on? No. So that's good. We'll go about like that. And I may need to drag some of this over, get a better shape in there. Okay, that's enough of all that sculpting in front of you. Now, how do I create the straps? So first, you've got to find the pattern that exists. And so if we go back to the actual boot itself here, you can see that there's a very clear-cut pattern of wedge, 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 and another wedge. And another wedge. So it's these interlocking wedges which we are going to use as the base for our sculpting. I'm going to clear that, go back into the old one, and so let's just use this one as reference. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is here one wedge, another wedge, don't invert it yet. We're going to try to drag as far this way as possible and in like that. So that essentially we have these diamonds on both sides. Once we have that, we could go in and massage this mask if we wanted to. Depends on how much time you really want to spend. I'm going to massage the mask a little, so I get a clear sense of where these things are overlapping. Just cleaning it up. Why did I do that? Okay, that one looks fine. This one looks a little undecided in where these things are going. That looks a touch better, but they're not lined up. Okay, and then same problem here. Gotta line them up. And crossing. This does not look like anything is even crossing right there. So let's make sure that something is crossing. But a little too much. Okay, fair enough. Now all we have to do is invert this. In fact, let's actually also get the space, because we are creating the negative space for our straps. So I really want to get everything else around that, including this area up here, which is going to be free of straps. Yeah, but that created a problem up at the top I need to solve, such as how does that get that thin? So, and it doesn't, just means I gotta go in and address this. Alright, now we can invert or not, but if I invert it, take a look, you can see those look like straps. Those are the straps that we are going to sculpt. We could push in, or we can do a host of other things. So in this case, what I'm going to do is turn the mask off. First, let me undo all of that. And let's actually invert so that it's that way. Turn that mask off. May make it a little hard to see, so let's do this. And then I'm going to go into Morph Target. I'm going to store a Morph Target. And with the Morph Target stored, I'm going to be able to go in with a layer brush and just add a uniform amount of depth. All the way across. The explosion you saw earlier is because I was using the morph feature, the constant depth feature, with the other part hidden over here, and so it did not like that. But I'm only going to sculpt one side at a time and then use resim to get it. And I'm lowering my Z intensity. I'm going to turn local on. Lowering my Z intensity so that the straps aren't incredibly thick at the beginning. But see how I'm just able to stroke all over the surface and it just builds up a uniform dimension, a uniform depth. That's the advantage of the layer brush if you have a morph target stored. It will just go in and add like this. Alright. So all I wanted to do was just separate it from the rest. So that now, say if I turn view mask off, you can see, from a distance we have the beginnings of straps, but we don't have any overlay. Nothing's overlapping anything else. So we need to give that a solid sense. So once these are kind of at this level, I may go in and actually just clear this mask and use clay tubes to work it from there. How many polygons am I at? I might divide one more time. And with clay tubes, I like to push in and then build back up. I find that that really helps give me a nice solid form. Now, it's gone over here, but is it going to go over or under here? So I've got to decide. Push down, build back up. And essentially decide, who goes where. So overlap this way as well. Build that, push that down, build it back up. Push it down, build it back up. Creates a nice lip as well, I find. So here, that one's over. So let's just take this over as well. And then we can do this one over. And then in the back, we'll swap that around. Always having problems there at the edges if I get too carried away. Alright, I'm not going to sweat this one on the top. That you're going to have to figure out on your own. I'm going to keep this tutorial short. But when you get into this area where these two join, don't be afraid to get in with a mask and start to really clearly define the regions. And also be careful of how much volume you build up. You may want to go into brush mod. You may want to set that down to 5. And then that'll be a lot slower of a build up, and you'll get in a lot less trouble. But here, for example, mask that off, and then you can get really a lot closer and build up a harder edge, but also a finer edge there. invert the mask, push that down, and then just build that back up. But there I got a pretty crystal clear definition. Now also, you're going to want to kind of add some character in here as well. Notice that my focal shift is at 16 with clay tubes, which is different than its default. And I find that that kind of just softens the edge. Otherwise, it would just be a little too much for me. And so just continuing this trek. So mask that off. Mask that off. Push it in. Invert that. In fact, just get a bit of a better. Build that back up. I lost that a little too much. And there you go. But pretty simple, pretty fast way. Just remember your interlocking wedges. And so that's a 2D pattern that will help you as a 3D sculptor create just the right shapes. So I hope you enjoyed. Happy sculpting.